Andrew Macdonald joins us now. He's the founding member of the Coalition to Stop the Arena at Potomac Yard. And Andrew, before we get into the particulars, tell us where you've lived. I think we saw you were maybe the vice mayor of Alexandria. Like, what is your involvement with Alexandria? Have you lived there for years?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Yep, I grew up in Alexandria pretty much, so I've been here, off and on my entire life, and got involved in civic life and became the vice mayor at one point in time. So yeah, I care a great deal about the community, and obviously got involved in this particular issue.
So Alexandria has different parts. There's Old Town, and Potomac Yard is newer section. There are new sections that have kind of blown up. When did you first hear about the Wizards and Capitals possibly moving to Potomac Yard, and what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, most people were really quite surprised. I think it was early December when, the announcement was made by Governor Youngkin and Ted Leonsis and others. And so, the citizens were extremely surprised. I guess, maybe there had been a little bit of news about it in the past, but basically it was a surprise announcement. Nobody thought that was the kind of development that, would occur in Potomac Yard. And so it felt really sort of like it was sort of announced as a done deal. And everybody said, wait a second, we want to have a say in this. We want to see if this is really a good thing, not just for Alexandria, but, also for D.C., because they're our good neighbors as well.
Andrew, in an article that you penned in Cardinal News, you said Potomac Yard is a terrible location for a sports and entertainment complex, and no amount of funding is going to fix that issue. Can you expand on that?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the most important things, we're talking about fans here, getting to the games and getting to the games easily. And, as we all know, Capital One Arena is a pretty good spot. You have a lot of metro stations, a lot of parking garages, a lot of roads. Uber can get there and take people to restaurants and so on. Potomac Yard is just sort of, it's great for certain kinds of development, but we basically have one road coming in. We have a very small metro station that wasn't designed anywhere near for the, kind of capacity. So I think the problem is that fans are going to find if they build an arena here, which I hope they won't, that they're going to be spending hours getting there and hours getting out. And it's very difficult to sort of solve that problem. You could spend more money on metro if the money is available, but that's not going to change the fact that you have one metro station and basically one road. So it's just not a good spot, I think, for this kind of venue to be located.
What's the number one reason for you as a resident? What's the number one reason for you don't want it there? Is it the construction? Is it the traffic? Is it the tax money? What is it? Number one.
For me, I think it's probably the traffic, but increasingly it's also the financial picture, because the amount of tax dollars are going to go into to build this. I think one of the largest public subsidies on record in the history of the U.S. for this kind of stadium, this kind of facility, and unfortunately, sports by and large don't generate a great economic benefit. It's wonderful that it's in D.C. because you have all the development around it. The mayor is willing to kick in $500 million, but I think for us it's a combination of traffic and finances, and the fact that the community really hasn't had a say. It's been sort of touted as a deal that is done, and you guys should like it. You should accept it.
Talking to Andrew Macdonald. He's the founding member of the Coalition to Stop the Arena at Potomac Yard. I wanted to get a little more into the economics of it. So
Sure.
What Monumental's going to say, and we'll talk to Jim Van Stone shortly, is that this is going to generate a ton of jobs. It's going to be great for the community, and that this is going to actually generate taxpayer money. I think in your article you point out the Battery in Atlanta. I'll let you fill us in. And you made an example of like a Target store. Fill us in on what people have kind of found out about the economic benefits of stadiums.
Yeah, I think the number one thing it's been, this is sports economists. I'm talking about people like Roger Knoll at Stanford, who has a lot to do with J.C. Bradbury, Dennis Coates at Maryland, people like that who've studied these facilities. And the general result is that stadiums are not very good economic generators. They're really a poor public investment. It's not to say you shouldn't have them, But once you start putting in more than several $100 million, the economic benefits just drop off. So I think that, this idea that we're going to, produce all these jobs and all these economic benefits, the studies that have been released by Monumental and the state of Virginia are all basically, PR studies. In other words, they haven't been willing to release any of the economic reports to the public. So it's really hard to sort of review all their claims. So I think the general feeling is, okay, show us the information and let us look at it. And if it's true, okay, we'll let people decide on the merits of that. But so far, they've been unwilling to do that. They just say, look, trust us. And I'm afraid we don't.
All right, I got a couple questions for you. The first one is, I have a buddy that lives in the Alexandria area, and he was texting me the other day, and he thinks it's crazy that people are against it. It's his opinion that his property values are going to go up. What is the sort of the history of that?
It's very unclear. In some cases, it does drive up property values, at least, I guess, near some of the facilities, which is great, if you want to sell your house. But if you're not maybe of the same, you don't have you're just not as wealthy. It's, you don't want your prices to go up. You don't want rents to go up. You'd prefer to have them sort of stay at least. I mean, Alexandria is already one of the most expensive places. So we're struggling to help people live here. People that go to the games and maybe they can, they can afford a ticket, but they don't want to be, this is part of the other story of this is that to finance this project, everything from parking to ticket prices will go up. And so fans are not only going to find it more difficult to get there, but they're going to find it a heck of a lot more expensive, I think.
Have you been were you part of the contingent that was also kind of like anti-Amazon, all of that stuff? Are you basically like, you don't want any more of this stuff there? Like you like it the way it is?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Alexandria's got to change, and it is changing. So Potomac Yard, I think everybody realizes and wants development. They just want to see a development that is sort of, they want the community to be involved in the process. And, and in this particular case, unfortunately, our city council has sort of sidestepped the community and said, hey, this is really good. We want to do it, without consulting, the people that are most affected. So no, we want the development. We need the development. We just don't think this is the kind of development that will, help Alexandria thrive. Whereas we think it's great for DC. And, the mayor's put $500 million on the table to help renovate things. And so it seems to us a much better use of dollars and better for the fans, ultimately.
What kind of recourse do you have? We understand there are a variety of different hurdles, right? There's all these different votes, and for this whole process, it could take years. But what is your plan of attack? What kind of options do you have?
Well, I mean, right now, as you probably know, the General Assembly is voting on a bill, and the House passed the bill yesterday, but 40 members in a very bipartisan group voted against it.
Right.
So I think things are turning. I think people are beginning to look at the financial impact of Virginia. I think they're beginning to look at the traffic issues. I think, hopefully they're beginning to think about D.C., our neighbor, that folks there, we should care about them as well. So I think things are turning. I think this project will be defeated probably in the legislature. And then, hopefully we'll, try to invest. Monumental will invest in DC and in the fans that that frequent it and can get there a lot more easily.
So you think this will end soon?
Well, that's certainly what we're hoping, and we're working very hard to do that. And we hope that the fans who are concerned about it moving will also contact their legislators and voice their opinion too. So yeah, we're pretty confident that things now are moving in the right direction, that, people are beginning to assess the real economic costs of this project, the real quality of life impacts, and, and the impacts to Virginia taxpayers.
What's the percentage of people, if you guys have run a poll, maybe in your newspaper or maybe in polls you've seen, of Alexandria residents right now that are in favor of it and against it? Do you know?
No, we don't. I mean, I think Monumental is on a poll, but they haven't released the numbers. Maybe you can ask them why they haven't. But we've done petitions. We've had, several thousand people sign it. Just based on, all the work we've been doing in the community, I would say there's a significant majority that are opposed to it. I think there are a bunch of people that, would like at least to have more say in the final decision. I just don't think there's a great deal of support for this project. I think actually Fox just had a poll this morning, and I think it's overwhelmingly against moving the arena to Alexandria.
So, Andrew, explain more of the tax issue. I'm the only one of the four of us on the show that's a Virginia resident. I'm in Loudoun County.
Sure.
So explain. So it's my understanding that the taxes wouldn't go up for Virginia residents, just a certain portion of the money of the taxes would go towards the project. Is that true, or am I off base on that?
No, you're not completely off base. I mean, fundamentally, the idea is to have the arena and all the ancillary things around it through taxes on parking, on tickets, on everything going to pay off the bonds. The problem is that when you borrow, $1 billion, $1.5 billion, it has to be backstopped by the taxpayers of Virginia and Alexandria. So if these projects end up not producing the revenue, which is very often the case, revenue they say, then taxpayers will have to pay the bill. And this often happens. So, maybe immediately there's no direct impact to taxpayers, but eventually, you and I and all the other Virginia taxpayers may have to pay more. And that, of course, affects all the other funding priorities from education to,
right,
I don't know, Little League soccer, all the things that we might want to fund with our tax dollars.
All right, that is Andrew Macdonald, founding member of the Coalition to Stop the Arena at Potomac Yard. I just wanted to say I put up as a Junkies poll of the day brought to you by Van Meter Homes. Do you want the Capitals and Washington Wizards to move to Alexandria?
It's a very scientific poll.
Only 35% say yes. You can vote at Junks Radio. 40% are no, and 25% no preference.
I just have a question. Do you think, because we have John Feinstein on every week, and John has said from the beginning that he thought that Ted was bluffing. Do you think by in any stretch of imagination that he's simply bluffing and just using his leverage to get more out of D.C. when it's all said and done? That he deep down doesn't believe this will actually happen?
I really don't know. I think that's something you'd have to ask him. I mean, he said he wants to move here, and I take him on his word. I just don't think it's a good business decision. I don't think it's a good investment for Virginia. And actually, I mean, I think if his fans would prefer to stay in D.C. because for all the reasons, if we can improve the facilities and do things, that would be a much better investment decision for him. But you just have to ask him that question.
Gotcha. By the way, I'm just curious, apropos of nothing, but are you a sports fan?
Absolutely, I am.
And you're a Caps fan?
Yeah, I'm a Caps fan. I love hockey. I love basketball. I love both of them. I'm a big tennis player, but I'm a big sports fan. Absolutely.
Where do you stand on pickleball?
I love tennis so much. I'm not one of these tennis players that says don't play pickleballs. I think it's great that people are out doing stuff, hitting. I think it's wonderful.
All right. You're gaining a little steam here with me,
Andrew. I'll say this: he seems
but he's open to it.
He seems very reasonable.
I seem reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Seem reasonable.
Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thank you.
Really, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. All right. Thank you, buddy.
He's the former vice mayor of Alexandria.
What does that even mean?
And he's the founding member of the Coalition to Stop the Arena at Potomac Yard.
Mayor's right hand.